Dave McAuley, thank you so much for bringing me to your favourite bar, the Hole in the Wall, close to the Phoenix Park, Dublin.
That's it. Well, thanks for inviting me, Gary, or coming to my pub. The Hole in the Wall is my local. Obviously a really old pub. It's, as you can see there. I think it was opened in 1650s or something like that. It's the longest pub in Europe apparently.
Oldest pub in Europe.
It's like 100 meters long, and but it's like 10 houses added together that were
Okay.
knock the wall down, knock the wall down, knock the wall down. So
Yeah.
you kind of meander through it. It's an amazing pub. Lovely, right beside the Phoenix Park. That's where the hole is. The hole is literally through the wall into the Phoenix Park. And it's about a
Oh,
10 minute.
right.
No, it
That's
is.
why.
It's about a 10 minute walk down. It's about a 20 minute walk back, I think. Or
Oh, the pub.
yeah.
10-minute walk down, and yeah, 5 hours later.
The meander on the way back, you know.
And the hole in the wall is because it's beside a legacy actual hole that gets you into the Phoenix Park, right?
Yeah, it's been there a long time, so it's really good. You can see it's kind of like a really rustic pub, really good. And winter time, Christmas time. I see you have you're there at Christmas for time traveling here.
Exactly. I'm in Christmas. I'm just getting ready. And I see that you have an amazing barman that just stands there waiting for you. He's like my Labrador. He's waiting for you to say something and he'd be over.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't think it's the owner. Martin is the owner, but I don't think that's him. Hard to tell from behind, but yeah, it's well tended bar, so you'd be happy out in there for 15
And,
pints of Guinness or whatever you're having, you know.
and is it one of these places that back in the day sort of probably everything was served from tea to sugar and pints, the whole lot? Probably the
I'd say,
community.
I'd say so. It's quite versatile. Like during the COVID thing, they obviously had to close, and
Hmm,
they instantly put up a coffee shop outside. And that gets more business now, I'd say, today than the bar itself. It's got an off license, got a couple of restaurants in it. It's a really quirky kind of place, you know. But the owners are fairly innovative. They've managed to survive all these years with it. I don't know how long the family have it. The Caffertys, I think they've had it for a few generations. The old guy is there. He's not very mobile now these days, but
yeah.
seen him, I think I seen him about a year ago. So they're publicans through and through. You know, the owner said to me he wouldn't have advised anybody to do the pub trade
Is that
growing
right?
up,
Yeah.
tough business, you know. But
And,
they've
and
certainly done well.
And for those that aren't overly familiar with Dublin, the Phoenix Park is meant to be the biggest walled park in Europe as well.
It's like it's I think 1,700 acres. It's
Wow.
huge. Like if you look at a map of Dublin, you've got this big. They call it the lungs of the city sometimes because it's just like it's fields and trees. There's thousands of trees in it. It's amazing. I walk like 2 minutes down the road here. I'm into the park, one of the gates at the back of we're right at the back of the Oris, the president's house, the Oris on Outram. So we
Okay.
kind of go in the back entrance. He's got his little orchards and stuff at the back there, and his little vegetable gardens. We can go in that way, and then you've got Dublin Zoo, one of the oldest running zoos in the world, I believe,
Hmm.
is there, and you carry on around. It's got an old magazine fort, which is an old battlement. So it was built. The walls were built during the famine, I think, 1850s, to give people some work to do, so they could pay them to do work. So that was when the
Oh,
walls were built way back.
can you
It's
imagine?
amazing. It's
If
amazing utility in the middle of the city. It's sacred. Like it's just like I can go out for a walk. I can do 10 kilometers, and I'm just walking around trees. Like literally, and 10 minutes I'm in the city. Like it's brilliant. Like
so,
Dublin.
if things go a bit south on the old data and the centres and stuff, you could be a Dublin guide, Dave. You could actually, you could be right from your own house. I was wondering what you were saying there, the back of the Oris, and I was thinking, where is this going to go? But I'm glad you qualified it
Big
out
clarify.
by that it's Gaelic and it's the where our president actually
Yeah.
lives, right? So let's assume that there's some sort of an electrical storm and everything's wiped out, bar three apps on Dave's phone. Three.
Three apps.
3 apps on your phone.
Mm,
What would they be?
it's a tough one because, you know, WhatsApp has got to be top there because how do you keep in touch with everybody? How do you communicate? Spend more time on WhatsApp. What else would I have? Probably YouTube, actually. It's funny, we were in the car yesterday. Give the kids the iPad or something, and it's watching YouTube. And then in the evening, you go in and see what they were watching, which is kind of weird. It's kind of scary, you know. And when he comes out after we get out of the car and says, "Daddy, I wanted to have my own YouTube channel so I can buy a Ferrari," kind of stuff. It's like, okay, what are they watching? Maybe I'd delete that one, actually. Maybe I would delete that one. I'll swap that one. I'll have Spotify instead, I think. I thought about it.
And this is what, an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old or something?
I have a 7-year-old, so it's
7-year-old.
already getting the bug from, and we limit the use of devices. It's like if you're on a plane or on a long, like we were coming from Galway yesterday, so it was in the car, so we allow them to have it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just get so influenced by the YouTube channels, like,
So,
and they're watching videos of other guys playing Minecraft.
yeah. Yeah.
Boys, no. You can only play Minecraft on the weekend because I'm trying to restrict that, and you get a few hours.
Yeah.
But when they get time, they say, "Well, can I watch? Can I watch the TV or watch YouTube?" Yeah, okay. And they're watching guys playing Minecraft. It's like,
But Dave, that doesn't sound as crazy as what I'm going to say to you. About 20 years ago, my wife used to say, so you sit on a Saturday watching people watching a match to tell you what's going on. There's this thing on, the lads report. I says, yeah, it's great.
yeah, yeah.
So, I know that times change, but I guess when you have a passion for something, but I have to go back. How do you connect? I want a YouTube channel and I want a Ferrari. How does he know or that you monetize these? He's
just get it. I remember he asked me. It must have been a year ago. How do these fellas make money? How do they get paid to do that? Do they not have a job? So, well, that is their job. And how does that work? And you explain it. And the thing with kids, they're sponges. You tell them something, you forgot you've told them, and it comes back to you. Like, oh, I should have thought that through before I answered that question. Unfortunately, 2020 vision isn't something
no,
we have.
no, and you can't hide behind the ask your mother anymore because she'll bounce it back to you. And you've 2 boys, so yeah, a few interesting conversations ahead of you, Dave.
Absolutely, yeah.
And don't put it on digital because it's always there. Your digital footprint.
Yeah.
So the third one. What's the third one?
The third one, do you know, it's a funny one. This Google Maps.
Google Maps.
Google Maps, because everywhere you go, you're traveling. You need to know where you're going to go. So if I'm traveling, I put all the airport, I put the hotel, I put any bars or anything I'm going to, any events I'm going, all go into the map. And then when you get there, you're walking along a street and you go, oh, and they're popping up on the map so you can find things. But it's more than that. Like if I'm going to the supermarket, I'd probably put it in to Google Maps. Or certainly if I'm going home, anywhere I'm about to go home.
You have bad memory or something?
No, it's just, I don't know what it is. It's like, you look at it, it's like, oh, it tells you there's traffic there, so go this way.
Oh.
So you just, or it's going to take me 10 minutes or 15 minutes to get back.
Yeah.
I think these days you're always looking at the clock. So it takes the stress away from how long it's going to take you to get there. Or maybe you take a wrong turn and you go, it's not the end of the world. It'll reroute you back. And I think that's amazing technology.
Yeah. But it's interesting you say that because I've started using Google Maps more now since I got a fully electric car. Why? Because on the basis that if you're on a motorway, you're absolutely rattling down the battery. And sometimes you can get to a place through traffic and around the same time. But because you're starting and stopping, it's recharging. So you get much better charge for the same journey. It's an interesting one, yeah. So anyway, be no good to you if you're stuck on a desert island or something, of course. But yeah.
Well, if the wipeout happened that you're describing, maybe none of these apps would really matter anyway, would they? Because you'd probably just be looking for food.
True. That's the yeah. Yeah, or Netflix. You wouldn't be really worrying about
Yeah,
Netflix
you wouldn't be watching
that
movies.
moment in time. So, in terms of a pint, so you're right down the back of this pub, 100 meters away.
Yeah,
I'm not sure you're going to see when the door opens, but let's say you can. Who would you love to have a pint to walk in? Who would it be?
it's a great question. It's a great question. Do you think of celebrities? Do you think of politicians? Do you think of? I think reflecting on this one, I think it has to come back to family.
Okay.
I think I'd have my grandfather walk in the door there, and he's gone about 15 years, but a true dub.
True
Henry
dub.
True dub, like
Right.
Henrietta Street originally,
Oh,
lived in East Wall in a little house in East Wall. Big family, 11 kids in the family. Brought up 6 boys himself. I'd love some advice from him. I have 2 boys, so I'd love to know what can I do, you know. But it's the perspective. It's the older. That is completely different generation compared to what like the world he lived, grew up in is a million miles away from the world my kids are growing up in. I mean, I'm like just so different, you know. I mean, we moved house 20 years ago, and we lived in a little house in Carver, 2-bed house, just myself and my wife. And I remember telling my grandmother at the time, I said, "Oh, we're moving to a bigger house because we've outgrown that house." And she said, "Is that right, yeah? Poor thing," she said, "Your grandfather grew up in the exact same style house in Dublin, in East Wall, with 10 brothers and sisters. But you've outgrown it, have you?" And you so the perspective of just what we, I think, what we see, and I see it now with my kids. Add 40 years on to my life, and you get into my kids kind of generation, and it's like, Jesus, it's a totally different world, you know. So to have him walk in and sit down, such a nice man, and to just have that perspective, I think I'd pay any amount of money for that.
and
You know?
and even to the point of the historical days that he would have lived through. You know, GP. I mean, he would have been 1800, late 1800s born. So even to talk about world wars and pandemics and how they adapted, and yeah, it'd be really fascinating, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's different. Like, I think he was born in like the would have been. I know he would have been born after World War One, but he would have been 80. Say if he was 80, yeah. I mean, he would have definitely lived through wars, and certainly he predated GDPR and all that good stuff. You know,
Thank God for that.
they didn't like. He used to make stuff like you go into the house and there'd be a lamp on the wall. There'd be 2 lamps. I remember these 2 lamps on the wall. That
Yeah,
the house would be getting wallpapered or something, and I'll leave those lamps. Your granddad made those lamps. It's like he made the lamps, like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the same
amazing.
as my granddad was a bootsmith or a shoe cobbler, I guess, cobbler. Same thing. The scraps. He
Yeah,
used to make these little cottages. Um,
amazing.
I guess yeah, and going back to some of the early discussions we had about sort of time, passing time. Even in the cars. Do you remember going for trips in the car with your mum and dad and all the rest, and you play H's or something, which was hydrants. If you saw a hydrant, you said H,
Oh
or
yeah,
if you
yeah.
saw a red, or if you said a red car, you said red car, and we all picked cars. Um, Now a child wouldn't do that.
It's
Jim,
funny. I tried it recently. We were driving to a few weeks ago. We flew into Barcelona and we went down to Salou place, a theme park place with the kids for 3 or 4 days.
yeah,
And of course, you've an hour in the car,
right.
and you're trying to entertain the kids. And of course, you've got a manual gearbox on the other side of the road, and the elbows hitting the window, and the signs are different. And you're trying to drive along, and they're screaming. I stopped them at one stage. I said, "Daddy is sick of this," you know. And you give them a list of all the things that you're trying to deal with, you know.
We'll edit that bit out, Dave, because you
Yeah,
can't do that type of thing anymore as a parent. Wait, it's all sugar, man. It's no stick. We'll edit that.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's maybe why I need the advice, you know.
Social services will be on and in about half an hour. But it's
But
true.
true, but trying to end like the kids are there and they're like a cheap rental car, whatever, but it's still like a million miles away from what we had. Like stand in the back of the car with the dog and the
Yeah,
cornflakes toaster because you were dropping down to see neighbours. sorry, not neighbors, but we had family in New Ross, and we
Okay.
could it was 3 hours to New Ross, or 3.5 hours. I mean, you do it in less than two now with the motorways, but
Yeah,
you'd
yeah.
be squashed into the car, and there'd be all your bags and food. You'd be bringing like all
And
the
Dave,
stuff
but hold on a second. I'm a little bit older than you, but what's with the toaster?
because I don't know. My mum would just pack everything into the car, the toaster and everything. Like, oh, they don't have a toaster down there, and you like toast in the morning. You have a toaster. I never forget
Oh
it.
yeah, I know
There,
that's like
and
my mum and dad, and they go to Spain. They'd bring half Super Quinn with them,
yeah,
steaks and tea and butter.
they
And the
don't have
butter's
any of
not
that
the same.
down there.
The butter's not the same, but a toaster. And that's a new one on me, even Dave. So I think there might have been some oddments,
Yeah.
bit of
And,
oddments.
and do you remember you always got a puncture at
No.
some point on the journey? There was always a puncture. I don't know, maybe it was just the cars my dad had. Just there was always we always ended up at the side of the road at some point, fixing the bushing was gone, or
Yeah, yeah. No,
never.
we always had a broken window with the winding up. And I seem to remember always sitting on the side that had the broken window with the rain coming in and nobody could fix it. Or on the way back from Bray one day. And Bray and Ballantyre isn't anything but 10 kilometers, right? The windscreen wipers were broken, right? So the father, ingenious as he was, had two pieces of string. It was regular enough. It wasn't sort of rocket science. Now, if somebody the windscreen wipers, I guess you probably wouldn't be able to do that because it'd be on some timer or something. But listen, I am sure and confident that there's stuff today that we'll look back on 30 years ago and say, "Do you remember? You remember we used to have to actually swipe something? We didn't tell it. Do you remember? Do you remember the car we had to have to use this thing? I think it was called a steering wheel. What was it, Betty? What was it called?
Well, you can see these Apple glasses now that they're coming, whatever they're called. I mean, that really has opened it up. Where you can see
Yeah.
virtual, augmented reality and virtual reality together, and the idea that you can, just a gesture on your fingers is instead of having any input device, you're basically your eyes moving, and a movement of your hand or something can be enough. So I think that's definitely where it's going. So I think you're right. I think even in 20 years we look back, and all it'll be just everything we do will be, because like 20 years ago we didn't have the iPhone, so
Yeah, no,
even
you're
wasn't
so
as
right. I'm moving the other way, Dave. And you and I are in digital infrastructure in some way. You work in it, I work on it, and all the rest of it. But I'm going the other way. I prefer this new headset that doesn't have anything in it. It just shows you the world, and it's called actual reality, where
yeah.
you can go around and you actually see trees and stuff. Um, I think there might be a move, and we have to, you and I talk about it sometimes. All that world is great and tools to use, but there's nothing like what you said you did earlier. Go out for a walk, be surrounded by a few trees, and see things that. What would you see in the morning? You probably see a lot of deer up in the Phoenix Park and rabbits and all sorts of bits and bobs. Do you?
A lot of squirrels, gray squirrels, a lot of birds, and the deer, of course, are amazing. Like I nearly got attacked one day. I went over it. I don't know what sort of season it was, but I was I was walking along and I have my headphones in. I'm listening to a podcast or something. I'm kind of going, those deer up there. There's a big lot of football pitches. I'm kind of saying
Hmm.
they're jumping around a bit and they're getting a bit closer to this path and they look a bit aggressive, but I just carry on.
Yeah.
Next thing I go, there's one of them that's been ostracized and they're fighting with him and
Okay.
they're all chasing this guy and they're big antlers on them and the whole thing. Then I kind of started to get a bit worried. I thought this is actually getting a bit close, and suddenly I realized I'm kind of in the middle. They're moving across the path now, and I'm kind of in the middle of this, and they're a lot bigger than you might think. They look nice
Oh
and
yeah.
cute, and you'd go over with the kids
Yeah.
and all. They're all nice and cute, but
Yeah.
whatever was going on, they were having a row, and I was in the wrong place. I didn't because you hear of people getting
Yeah.
rammed by them. It's kind of scary, but
But the world's gone a bit crazy. I just saw last week as well. The not little, big brown and black bears in Canada, and they've had to officially tell people when they're giving them the tickets to stop taking selfies with brown bears and black bears. And what you need to know about these guys are 8, 9 foot tall and kill you. They'll just kill you. And they have to stop people from feeding and feeding wild animals.
Yeah.
I mean, honest to God.
You
So
have this in the park. You have signs: "Don't feed the deer." Don't because
and
people are straight over. Yeah.
straight over. But it is a bit like sometimes, and we were all boys. Don't walk on the grass. That's like walk on the grass. Definitely. Ask your 7-year-old. So David's been short and sharp. We've learned a bit about where you live, where you walk and stuff. Thanks for your time. Look after your boys. Jeez.
Most important thing, Garry.
You know what? If I hear a big vroom, vroom, in about 8 years' time and you're being driven to a meeting, it worked out for him. Fair play.
Hopefully so.
Yeah. Thanks,
It's a
Dave.
pleasure. Thanks, Garry.